Annually, the month of June signals the influx of millions of students as school classes begin. But the onslaught of many typhoons during monsoon season triggers cancellations of classes. House Bill 104 was filed in the lower house to change the school calendar from June to March to September to May. Once approved, the new calendar will cover all public and private institutions, the elementary, secondary, and tertiary levels. Several universities, including the University of the Philippines, Ateneo de Manila, De La Salle University, and the University of Santo Tomas, approved the said proposal as it coincides with the opening of classes in most Southeast Asian countries, allowing more foreign students to come and study in the Philippines. But those in the opposing camp believe that changing school calendar will do harm more than good, as it would mean students bearing summer heat inside their classrooms, and that most long and culturally significant holidays such as Holy Week and other major feasts fall during the summer months. Welcome to Opposing Views, a hard, straightforward discussion of today's most pressing issues. The issues surrounding our education system seem to never end. Shortly after the controversial K-12 program of the government, sectors calling for education reforms suggest moving the school calendar from June to March to September to May for various reasons. We'll examine this issue tonight. Now, question, should the government change the academic calendar of primary, secondary, and tertiary schools? Good evening, I'm Rod Nepomuceno, and this is Opposing Views. Joining us tonight in our discussion is Abacada Party List Representative Jonathan De La Cruz. Congressman Jonathan, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Magandang gabi, Rod.
Yes. Give us your 2 cents summary of this issue. Are you for moving the calendar or against?
I am for moving the calendar for a number of reasons. The more basic being, we should be in sync with the global educational calendar.
All right.
Basically.
All right. And with us also is ASEC Tony Umali, spokesperson of the Department of Education. ASEC, good evening.
Good evening, Attorney Rod. Good evening to our televiewers.
Yeah. What are your quick thoughts on this topic? You're obviously against.
No, we are open to the idea, but for now we cannot see any compelling reason to shift our opening of classes from June to August or September.
All right. Okay. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us tonight. So my first question will be regarding House Bill 104, which was filed by Cavite Representative Mercado Revilla. Congressman Jonat, you said you're in favor of this bill. It was a bill that she passed recently. Can you elaborate further why we need to move the academic calendar?
At this point in time, Rod, good evening nga pala kay Tony. At this point in time, the most compelling reason for moving the calendar is because we want to be in sync, as I said, with the global educational calendar. We are the only one out of 2, I think. One of 2 countries in Southeast Asia, for example, that uses the June to March calendar. The other one being Brunei.
Okay.
The others are already moving in other directions. In the case, as you said, in the case of Singapore, January to, mas ano pa nga sila. It's actually the calendar year. In our case, we are trying to move from June to September so that we can be in sync with the others, especially with the countries that we are dealing constantly with. For example, the US, Europe, European countries, Japan. These countries, we are dealing with them. There are a lot of possibilities for exchanges. There are a lot of work out for them, for us to be able to be working with their professors, with their teacher training, with their student exchanges. A lot of these benefits can accrue as a result of our being in sync with them as far as the school calendar is concerned.
All right. Now, ASEC Tony, your thoughts on this? The argument is that it's more of synchronization and it's a global
world now. I mean, we can't exist independent of all these countries now that we're dealing with. No?
Yes. Synchronization as an argument, I believe that will be valid for our tertiary education, maybe not for the basic education, meaning kindergarten to high school. It's true what the good congressman said, that most of the countries, particularly those countries in the northern hemisphere, those countries above the equator, including the Philippines, we are in the northern hemisphere, have August or September as the start of their classes. However, there are many other countries where they have January, for example, Australia as the opening of their classes, New Zealand, Malaysia. Malaysia is sometime February or March. Thailand is May. Indonesia is July. So what are we trying to say? If ever we would like to make this shift, we should look for that compelling reason. And in the case of basic education, I cannot speak for tertiary. Maybe it's true that there are lots of college students from other countries, studying. For example, Adamson. I talked to a school official. They have at least 20 nationalities in that school alone. And you know that, Attorney Rod,
yes.
Marami po talagang mga mag-aaral galing sa, lalo-lalo po sa kolehiyo, pumapasok po sa atin. Ngunit sa basic education, hindi po ganun kadami. So, if that will be the reason, maybe it's not the correct reason. And considering the other reasons why, which I may discuss later, we are starting in June instead of August or September. We believe that maybe it's not yet wise at this time.
Right. Now, so you mentioned earlier that perhaps the debate is open, but you think that House Bill 104 it's not a pressing matter. You don't think that it should be prioritized
We don't want to say that, otherwise Kong
Yeah,
Lani
Kong
will
Lani.
be, and Kong Jonathan. No, what we're just trying to say is that the reason being advanced. So actually, we have been discussing this, for quite. What would you say, Kong? Every year, when that first storms hit the country, according to Chair Likwanan, we will start talking about moving this from June to August or September.
Which is the other reason, actually. The situation is June to August usually are the typhoon.
That's right.
Typhoon months, and that is the reason why sometimes this becomes one of the other reason for moving the school calendar.
Because obviously it's more difficult logistically for the kids to...
It's more difficult, even for those in elementary and high school, to move around. It becomes a problem, especially since you have to cut classes and everything else in times like those. So, yun ang mga nagiging malaking problema rin. But I think there is really a need for us to restudy the school calendar as we know it at this point in time.
Now, do you think though that I guess there's so many issues coming in. No? Of course, K-12 as we were trying to do educational reforms. You think though that changing the calendar is a pressing matter? It's something that we should prioritize now. Or it's something that can wait?
At this point in time, I think it is something that can wait. As a matter of fact, and I think Asik Tony will agree with me, there are a lot of other issues. Just this K-12, you just mentioned K-12, Rod, no? Just this K-12 program, how we are going to transit from a non-K-12 to a K-12 program is already a big problem.
Yes,
we are still in the process of working out, stabilizing ourselves in a sense, in this particular situation. So the calendar, I think changing the calendar can wait. But
we really have to address it now.
I think we have to address it and come out with a formula by which, for example, in another 3 or 5 years from now, probably we can already say, okay, we are now agreed that this is the best school calendar for
we
us.
tried that, we tried that, Attorney, right? Sometime in the 1960s. And we tried to adopt that formula. Slowly, we are trying to shift. We tried to shift, rather, from June to August or September. But we went back to June.
Oh, so you already tried it before?
1960s, yes.
Okay.
I don't really know the reason why.
Why we went to June.
got back to June. Eh.
Yes.
Okay. But no, there was a survey, and let me digress a bit. There was a survey in 2009, a DepEd survey, and 13 out of 16 of the regions were against
moving.
changing it. Yeah, changing the school calendar. Now, what are your thoughts on that? Obviously, that's a lot, because I think the whole weather argument mainly affects Luzon. I mean, generally, Visayas, of course, with exception of what happened recently, but generally, Visayas and Mindanao don't get as much rains as Luzon does.
During those months.
Yeah, during those months. So I guess that's the reason. So, but would you like to comment on that? 13 out of 16 of the regions are not really in favor. So I guess we're focusing too much on Metro Manila. No? What are your thoughts on that? That a great majority of the regions don't believe that you should change the academic calendar.
You know, changing has always been something of a problem, especially in the educational sector. We are tradition bound.
Yeah. I guess, yeah.
So it will take some time probably for us to explain why this should be so. No, especially as Tony mentioned, we are talking about the basic educational sector, elementary and high school. In other climes, for reasons that are very obvious to those societies, for example, in the case of the U.S., they have seasons, and therefore they have to adjust to all of those seasons. In our case, we are also adjusting to that, but at the same time, as I said, the more compelling reason is actually the possibility of us getting into the global educational calendar. The reason being, as I have always been mentioning, we have 10 million Filipinos overseas. Many of them are parents. Most of them have children in school. Many of them would like to be with their children at some point in time. They cannot do that in the middle of the year because that is the working year. They can only do that at some point in time. So they have to be working.
Congressman, sorry to cut you off, no, but we need to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk to ASEC Tony, and to discuss what his thoughts are with regard to the argument relative to weather in justifying the move of the academic calendar. We'll be right back. Please don't go away. All right, welcome back. You're still watching Opposing Views. We are talking about the proposed legislation changing school calendar to September to May. We have with us Abacada Party List Representative Jonat de la Cruz and ASEC Tony Umali, spokesperson of the Department of Education. Our debate question for tonight: should the government change the academic calendar of primary, secondary, and tertiary schools? Now, before the break, we were already starting to talk about the impact of the weather, no? the weather factor, so to speak. Because the general argument earlier of Congressman Jonat was more on the synchronization. But when you look at House Bill 104 of Congressman Mercado Revilla, the argument is more on the weather. Because obviously, when we start school, it's June. And I remember when I was a kid, I didn't really look forward to opening of school because it normally meant raincoats and you know, especially if you're taking public transportation, it's quite a hassle, and you get to school really wet, and obviously illnesses are not too far away. No, what are your thoughts on that? I think it's a legit concern, no?
Basically, to summarize the argument on whether to shift the opening of classes from June to August or September, they talk about that when storms visiting our countries, we cancel classes, and therefore, if we move this, obviously, if we have no classes in June and July, instead have classes in April and May, then no classes will be canceled. Weather being made as the reason. Now, not only if there are storms, they say, if during these rainy seasons, our streets are flooded, and also classes are being suspended. And so also they talk about whether the streets being flooded or not, since it's rainy, it will cause so much inconvenience to our kids. DepEd is saying that the issue on strong rains, storms, ano po yan eh. Sa ibang buwan, that's also true. And we all know when Yolanda, Typhoon
It was
Ondoy,
November.
Pepeng, it's not even June or July. You know, it's November. So, and when they talk about inconvenience to our students, when we have classes in April and May, there's no doubt, Pag-asa said po at attorney, yung pinakamainit na panahon na itatala po dyan sa Abril at Mayo. At yung inconvenience sa ating mga anak, buong bansa po yan, pangkalahatan. But when you talk about rains, floods, you're talking about Metro Manila. When you talk about typhoons, you're talking about specific regions in the country. All other parts of the country
Are good weather.
maganda po maganda pong pumasok ang mga bata. At hindi po wala po tayong air conditioning system in our classrooms, you know, hindi po lahat may ventilador. Talaga pong napakahirap pong pumasok. So, yun po yung ano sa weather. Now, I'll go very quickly. Dun po sa 2009 survey na binanggit po nyo, yun po yung sinabing dahilan, you know, sa weather. Anyway, kahit anong buwan po, maulan naman po at mahirap din namang pumasok kapag napakainit ang panahon. Ang pangalawa pong sinabi, which we think is very valid, is giving quality bonding time to our kids, to their families. What do we mean by this? In the countries where they have August or September as the start of their classes, bakit po nila ginagawa yon? Kasi po, they have summer vacation. And when is their summer? It is June and July. Yung pong binabanggit po natin mga bansa.
Good weather.
Opo. Yung Australia, bakit po siya January pumapasok? Dahil meron po silang long Christmas vacation, they call it long Christmas vacation, dahil ang kanilang summer po ay December and January. The same thing is true with New Zealand and other countries in the southern hemisphere. You know, maybe those that start in May, like Thailand, maybe they have their own reasons. Pero summer pa rin po naman nila yung Abril. And ang sinasabi lamang po natin, sa atin din, yun din po ang ating ginagawa.
Okay.
We have our vacations during our summer months where quality bonding time will happen during Holy Week. Hindi ko po sinasabing, dahil tayo po isang katolikong bansa, hindi po dapat namamasyal kapag mahal na araw. Dapat po nagdadasal. Pero bago po yung Biyernes Santo, lahat po tayo ay nagkakasama-sama. Fiestas usually happen in April and May. Flores de Mayo and all those tournaments. Kapag nagtutournament po yung mga bata, lalo na po sa probinsya, Attorney Kong, I'm sure you will agree with me. Yan po yung time na lalabas mo ang mga bata, quality bonding time with their family. And that's very important. The concept of vacation, Attorney, I think we should visit that. Our kids studying, obviously not for 12 straight months, 10 months, and they have 2 months vacation. Where do you want to put this? During the summer months where they could spend quality time with their families, or June and July? Maulan po. Nasa bahay lamang po sila. I don't know what they will do.
So the argument is family quality time. Kong, I'm sure. What is your rejoinder to that? Family quality time during the summer months. I guess they're free to go out and hassle-free weather. There's no rain. Ano yung masabi mo sa family quality time during the summer months?
I will not argue against that. We really need. Kailangan natin 'yon. Quality time, especially for those growing up, no? Importante yan. And that is the reason why it is not necessary for us to start September, for example. We can start the calendar year. We can start February, March, or something like that. In other words, ang pinag-uusapan natin dito is we have to adapt to our requirements culturally and everything else, no?
Yes.
The other thing that I mentioned earlier is, again, we are in a global community. We are talking about 10 million Filipino parents. When is the best time for them, and when is the possibility for them to have to spend quality time with their kids? Maybe it's December. So maybe it's not September to May. Maybe it can be January to something like that. In other words, we have to look into these things in its totality. But my more important consideration, again, is how are we going to adjust in order for us to be global in sync with the educational calendar internationally. So, Tony is right. In other countries, this is the system that they have precisely because they have 4 seasons. They are working it out, etc. And these are the times when they can work out these things. Now, we have to study that as well. When is the best time for us to have exchanges? When is the best time for these students to come in? And then they will not lose or skip a semester or a year for them to get back. In the same manner that we have that. Because we are also trying to encourage more and more of our students to participate in exchanges.
All right.
Teachers,
All right.
administration officials,
All right.
school administrators, and the like.
All right,
These are the things that we would like to have.
Yeah, Congressman, sorry to cut you off. But let's talk about the aspect of practicality and cost. No? There are sectors questioning this move because what's going to happen is that if you have classes during the summer months, it would mean that the schools will have to concern themselves with more ventilation and thus, and we all know that electricity spikes up during the summer months, di ba? Because some aircon and of course to augment the electric fan and all that. So there's some fears from sectors, from the parents, that this would be a justification for the schools to increase tuition because mas mataas ang cost during summer months of electricity and maybe even water. What do you have to say about that?
Well, the cost, of course, will have to be considered. Lalo na sa mga bayan-bayan, sa probinsya. Kasi usually, the other thing there is many of these kids are also used for child labor. By the way, that's the other issue. Actually, that is the other issue as far as the calendar is concerned. Because at some point in time, many of these kids during harvest time, etc., are used for child labor. Again, we have to also take a look at that. No, but the cost, I think, whether it's going to be September or June, the cost will not be as much.
Asek, you think that's a factor? Is that a factor that you're considering that there are probably higher costs during the summer months? You consider that in the movement?
Yes. We pay for our electricity, of course.
Yeah, because my electricity spikes up.
Yes.
I mean, at home, no?
Yes, so we need to have those electric fans, set up, that's additional cost. Because we should have that all over the country, regardless where you're located. Because pag talaga pong summer months, napakainit po niyan. So definitely that's a factor.
Now, how about the argument na maybe it's not about the calendar, but maybe we'll just improve the infrastructure, the drainage system, so to speak. I mean, instead of moving the calendar, just playing devil's advocate here. I mean, instead of moving the calendar, why we just improve? And then the argument about the weather, why we just improve the drainage systems, the infrastructure of the schools, and also to provide, I guess, vaccines for kids. Rather than moving it, why don't we just fix those? What's your take on that?
Actually, whether you move it to September or not, you still have to undertake those. What you are telling now, Rod. The infrastructure, drainage, etc. We really have to do all of those things.
So those are two I guess, separate issues altogether.
Whether you are going to change your calendar from June to September, you still have to do all of these things. As a matter of fact, there are more critical factors that you have to work on in order to improve your educational system in totality. There are a lot of other things that should be done.
Now, from a cost
I'll add to what the good Kong had just said. Yung argumento po na weather, yung kanselasyon ng klase during June and July nangyayari dahil nga po maulan o mabagyo. Pag mabagyo, klaro na po yung patakaran po natin dyan. Pag may typhoon signal, alam po natin kung ano pong level ng klase ang nakakansela. Yung isa pa pong nangyayari dyan, wala hong typhoon signal being declared by Pag-asa, pero nakakansela pa rin dahil nga po malakas ang pag-ulan, nagkakaroon ng pagbaha. Ano po yung epekto po nung sinasabi po ninyo dun sa ganong argumento? Kapag naayos po yung drainage system natin, yung issue po ng kanselasyon ng klase dahil po sa pagbaha, mawawala na po yun. So magiging isa na lamang. I think that's my take on that. Meaning, the only argument that they will now say is, because if there's no flood in our streets, I mean, klaro naman po yung patakaran natin pag may typhoon.
Hassle lang.
So yun na lamang po.
It'll be a hassle.
Mawawala na po yung argumento yun, mababawasan. And that will now strengthen the argument that maybe
To keep it as is.
Yeah.
Now, but yun nga but have you made a study though? Have you made a study na if, let's say, the number of cancellations, classes cancellation, or number of typhoon signal number 2, which results to an automatic cancellation of classes. Have you made a study of how many times that happens between the months of June to December, vis-a-vis January to May?
We should have that, but I don't have the numbers right now, attorney. But we
Because
could
I'd like to bet that there's probably more cancellation.
Correct.
Between June to December.
Correct,
right?
correct.
So that's empirical. That's
Correct.
not something I'm inventing. But
Correct.
so based on that, are we not, in a way, depriving our kids education, quality education, because of the number of days lost?
No, we have this law mandating that so much number of school days.
We'll have to meet up.
Yes. We have this DepEd order, 200 school calendar days. 180 non-negotiable. What we do every year, kapag naubos na po yung kanilang bakasyon, bababa ng 180, we have make-up classes. So we are addressing that.
All right, we need to take a short break. Meanwhile, join the discussions online. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/solaropposingviews. Follow us also on Twitter at opposing_views. Use the hashtag #OVSchoolCalendar. We'll be right back. Please don't go away. Welcome back. You're still watching Opposing Views on the Solar News Channel. Our guests are Abacada Party List Representative Jonat de la Cruz and ASEC Tony Umali, spokesperson of the Department of Education. And our question, should the government change the academic calendar of primary, secondary, and tertiary schools? Now, I wanted to ask you, ASEC Tony, again, playing devil's advocate here. This has something to do with weather, but more of sunlight. We have longer days during summer.
Correct.
And in my thinking, sayang naman with that daylight. Obviously, there's some students who are, I guess, challenged in terms of lighting and all that, electricity, especially in the far-flung areas. No? And if you have schools, you have school during the summer months, and there's longer daylight. Therefore, it'll be easier for them, less difficult to study. What are your thoughts on that?
We only have like 6 to 8 hours of class hours. So that's enough.
That's enough time.
Yeah. During the period of that day na may sunlight. Enough sunlight.
Do you think, though, that that's a valid argument as well for
Hindi
moving
siguro
it?
masyado.
Not as much.
Not as much, no? Actually, we were just talking earlier during the break. It is now quite possible to consider this changing of the school calendar, but designate it by way of the sectors. Meaning, for the tertiary schools, no, for tertiary level, I think even Tony will agree, Rod, that maybe that is something that we should seriously look into. Yung tungkol dun sa basic, meaning elementary and high school, again, there may be a way by which we can say, okay, we just stay with this kind of calendar, meaning June, start with June, end in March. But the problem will be, how are we going to then work out a situation where the high school senior, for example, gets into college.
He'll have to wait.
He will have to wait for
months.
some time.
For 4
What are we
months.
going to do about it? But that is also the same situation that we are having right now, that kind of problem with K-12. It's essentially, it is also trying
kind
to
of
catch
a
up.
synchronization
Synchronization then.
All right. I'll regress a bit, and I'll talk about again summer. During summer, there are many culturally significant holidays, no, such as Semana Santa and other major feasts, di ba? Mga fiestas.
Marami.
During the summer, no. Do you think that by transferring or by moving the school calendar and having school during that time, may tendency, so to speak, to
Skip
classes. Yeah. You know, kasi parang, I have to be with my family.
Pupunta ako dito?
Yeah, I have to be with my family. It's Holy Week and all that. And I'll i-break ko na yung Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You know, I'll be absent na. And, you know.
It can happen. But if you have a strict calendar, pwede mo namang integrate yun. Because even in the case of fiestas, for example, maski na mayroon kayong fiesta, pwede naman kayong mag-eskwela. As a matter of fact, pwede mo incorporate yung culture or yung tradition na magpapiesta dun sa pag-uusap ninyo sa eskwelahan. Pwede mo namang gawin yun. Kasi karamihan nga sa mga nagpa-participate sa fiesta, mga estudyante.
Mga estudyante rin,
Pwede mo i-incorporate yun sa
Corporate
workout.
as ano nila. Now, Asek, was this something that you take into consideration in keeping the
Tulad na sabi po ni Kong, our students, we encourage them to participate in community festivities like this. Quality bonding time for our families during summer months. And those are some of the reasons identified, Attorney Rod, why 13 out of 16 regions, respondent regions, prefer June as the opening of classes.
That was conducted though 4 years ago. Do you think
Yes.
that the sentiment is still the same?
I think that should be they should have the same sentiment.
Now, we are part of the ASEAN, and we have an agreement in the ASEAN about the free movement of goods, and this includes education, and I think this also includes, I guess, free exchanges of foreign student exchange and better mobility, so to speak. Now, you might have better mobility now with all the travel that's available, but then if they travel here, it's kind of the wrong time of the calendar. Are you not taking consideration of that?
For basic education, I don't think there are sufficient numbers to say that we have the compelling reason to make that shift. But maybe for tertiary education, just like I agree with the good congressman, yes. Yes, we have lots of foreign students. And I think some of the colleges and universities are now also thinking about that shift to have those students during the 2 years when we are going to fully implement K-12, when they will have lesser students. So
Taking
that's
that argument,
correct.
though, why don't we just shift na lang? Why don't you just let the colleges do their own thing, do their own? I mean, keep it the same, keep the calendar the same, but let the universities, such as the LaSalle and Ateneos, who are espousing this, why don't you just allow them to have that freedom? Why do you have to have all three levels, tertiary, secondary, elementary, all synchronized?
This may actually be the amendment to this particular bill. That what you are saying, Rod.
Okay.
Meaning the tertiary level, okay na yan, August, September.
Yeah.
And then the basic education, meaning elementary and high school, we will maintain it.
That's probably the compromise.
That may be the amendment. Now, what we would like to work on later on, if that's going to happen, is what are we going to do in the intervening months?
Yes.
That is what we are going to work out.
Now, we're talking about, on this topic na rin, on mobility and ASEAN agreement regarding education. I mean, behind those big words, mobility and exchange and all that, in reality though, does the ordinary student really benefit from this? As you would say, yung mga exchanges. I mean, there are only a few, di ba? I guess a handful of exchange students, so to speak.
No, actually, yung exchanges niyan can start with high school. You remember during, I don't know, kasi kayo mga bata kayo.
Yeah. Bata tayong lahat.
During our time, we had the American Field Scholar, AFS, then you have the Youth for Understanding, then you have this Ship for Asia program, etc. This help. These particular activities will help, and we will encourage. I don't know about the debate, but I will urge them to encourage this kind of exchanges, especially now, even at the level of elementary or even high school. But in the case of the tertiary level, the exchanges will really be very, very beneficial. The impact will be great.
So do you feel that with this shift in calendar, there would be a palpable, or should I say, an improvement, a marked improvement in the education of our young people? Do you think that there will be a major impact in the quality of education?
It will help. And then the other thing, and I would like to bring this to the discussion, the other thing that we are trying to encourage, and again, I mentioned this to Secretary Listro, I have mentioned this, I think, at one point to Tony, we would like to have the second, third generation of Filipinos overseas. We are talking about Phil-Canadians, Phil-Americans, etc., Phil-Japanese, even those in the Middle East, to experience Philippine life. They should be Hawaiianos, they should be allowed, they should be encouraged to come over, take a look at what happened, or where their parents came from, or where their grandparents came from. this may be part of the whole program again, and that can happen during the summer months. These are some of the things that we'll have to work out culturally. So it will help.
No,
the exchanges will really help.
No, I'll throw in the question to you about the impact of this changing of the calendar when we return. We'll need to take a short break. Don't go away. When we come back, the result of our online poll on the issue and the final pitch of our guests. Stay tuned. You are watching Opposing Views. Welcome back. This is Opposing Views. I'm Rod Nepomuceno, and we have with us a Bacada Party List Representative Jonah de la Cruz and ASEC Tony Umali, spokesperson of the Department of Education. Our question, should the government change the academic calendar of primary, secondary, and tertiary schools? Now, right before the break, we were talking about if in a way, there will be a palpable or marked improvement in I guess, the quality of education for young people. Should we move the calendar? Do you feel that there would be any, in regards to the quality of education, do you think there's any palpable improvement? Should we change the calendar,
Maybe.
whether worse or better?
Maybe no palpable impact, and that's what our secretary is trying to explain. We should see really that compelling reason. I know that what the good congressman said, the mobility of our students, we should be synchronizing our calendar with the rest of the world. I think that should be the compelling reason. But what we're trying to say is maybe the numbers are still not there. That's the reason why that compelling reason is still not there.
Now going back to, you were mentioning earlier, you have a mandated minimum number of school days, 180, right? 180, that it can't go lower than that. And if there are many cancellations, the kids will have to make up for it. Now, you're really taking away, I was a student once, and I hated it when it was compelled that I had to study on Saturdays. I earned that weekend, and then all of a sudden now I have to study. Or is the justification because you had a free day? How do you?
Well, the justification there is we have actually 200 calendar days, Attorney Rod, and studies show that the minimum number of 180 contact time, the kids actually going to school, should be non-negotiable. So, anything higher than 180, maybe that's still okay, even if you cancel your classes. But, imagine if we have canceled so many school days and we only ended, we end up kids going to school for like 120 days.
Right.
May problema po doon. And that's why we need to do all those. And I always say this to our parents. June and July, we have some inconvenience, maybe lots of inconvenience going to our school because those are the rainiest months, etc. Streets are flooded. But look at other countries during December. United States.
Winter.
Right now, they have this, the whatever they call the polar vortex.
And they canceled school.
Correct. So, ganun po talaga.
All over the world talaga.
Ganun po talaga. May kanya-kanyang inconvenience po talagang maaaring mangyari. So, that's what we're trying to say. If we make the shift, hopefully it should be for the correct reason.
Now, let's talk about cost. Cost to the government. In changing the calendar, is there a corresponding expense to the government? Would there be an additional cost that you will incur and therefore probably have to raise taxes?
Maybe not necessarily to raise taxes, but maybe more money to pay for our electricity. Maybe that's just the cost that we need to.
But otherwise, apart from that, apart from changing, I guess, printing of certain annual calendars and all that, there's not going to be much of an expense. Now, Kong Tony, your thoughts again. So just summarizing, we're reaching the final few minutes of the program. Maybe you can summarize lang, just generally your points here with regard to your argument on the movement and why you feel that it should be done sooner rather than later.
actually, the most compelling reason, and I have explained this earlier, is because we would like to be in sync with the global educational calendar. There are other reasons, but I think this issue about moving the calendar should take second priority to the other more compelling reasons on in improving our educational system. There are a lot of other issues, instructional issues, about teachers' training, about students' responses, these exchanges and everything, having more of our infrastructure, educational infrastructure in place. These are some of the things that we should consume ourselves with. The calendar can probably be discussed and then work out, have a compromise. My compromise as far as the calendar is concerned is actually for the tertiary, move. In the case, let them. In the case of the basic education, probably we should stay as is, but what we can do and what we should do in the case, in that particular instance, is for us then to be able to come out with a situation where the 4 months in between can be worked out.
Okay.
I think that's the best way.
All right. Now, Asek, Tony, your final thoughts on this? After hearing his argument, Congressman Jonat's arguments, have you changed your mind?
No. What the good congressman said makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, basic education stays, present calendar stays, but maybe tertiary education we could make that shift and figure out something what to do during those 4 months for our graduating high school students. So my position didn't shift, attorney, because my position is, or our position for now is that to keep it right now, because there's no compelling reason to make that shift for basic education at least.
Just taking off from your argument, and this is we're in our last 2 minutes, I guess, but I just wanted to throw this in as an idea or thought. If you're the argument, and if there's a strong argument with regard to quality family time, family bonding, and if and I only propose this, or I guess throw this here because I lived in Singapore once, and they really start in January.
Okay.
And I figured if you made summer, I mean vacation would be October, November, and the first 2 weeks of December, and then after that the Christmas break. Then you would have good quality family bonding time during the Christmas holidays, because then the employees or the parents who are working are normally on leave also. They're usually on leave also on All Saints Day.
Yeah.
And then what you have is perhaps the midterm would be the Holy Week break, which is around April.
Yeah.
Is that something that you considered?
Maybe.
Yeah.
No. Right now we're not considering that, but
Yeah.
maybe. I think that coincides with what the Congressman mentioned. Maybe it's January to December, so we need to look at that.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Of course,
Congressman,
we should look at that precisely because we want to make sure that, as I said, the biggest question right now is how we are going to improve the curriculum, teachers' training, the way we handle
that to you
shifts.
is the more
That's the more important matter. The calendar,
yeah.
I can agree with you. Maybe that is the better one, January to December, and then take the breaks to coincide with our regular traditional breaks, meaning Holy Week, All Saints Day, that kind of thing.
So the start will now be January, Kong, under that scheme.
Maybe,
so we will be in sync with Australia,
Singapore,
New Zealand, Singapore
yeah.
and other Southeast Asian countries. Malaysia starts in, I believe, in February.
And what
or
happens is,
January.
rather than breaking it all up in different long vacations, you just put together one long vacation for the kids. Basically, it's the summer vacation, and then the Christmas vacation is all in one chunk.
Yeah.
Of course,
Baka yan.
Baka sa ASEAN, pwede po yan.
Oh.
Kasi kung ASEAN countries, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, although they'll probably be rusty, no? Because that's like 3 months. 3 months they're on break.
That is going to be our problem if ever we do that. But that, again, what we are doing right now is to find solutions to many of these problems. And precisely, these are the things that we would like to look at.
But it is possible, you're saying that it is possible to have just a middle one,
ground,
wherein the tertiary will have
Yes.
its own
Yeah.
thoughts and then
The tertiary level will have a separate calendar from the basic level.
And in that scenario, the DepEd can't really control
Yes,
The universities?
yes, yes.
You allow the universities autonomy
Yeah,
when
yeah.
it comes to that?
No, the DepEd is only up to high
Basic,
school.
Yeah,
basic
so,
education.
So
yeah.
it's a CHED thing, and even CHED, with respect to those autonomous universities, all those autonomous universities need to do is to inform CHED. And
But
they
you
will
have
do it.
heard there, I mean, I think the 4 major schools are kind of in favor of it, right?
The five major
The five,
universities,
yeah,
yeah.
Surely it's something that you take into consideration.
The universities,
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking because of they're saying that, and obviously when the kids graduate, and if you have a different
they will have
calendar, they'll have to wait either 5 months or
4
They would have,
months.
or maybe longer, diba?
Yeah.
Longer. So
And then maybe that's where the idea of Kong Jonat will come in. We should figure out something, what to do during those 4 months.
all right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. All right. We'd like to thank our guests for this evening. Thank you very much. Abacada Party List Representative Jonah de la Cruz. And of course, ASEC Tony Umali, spokesperson of the Department of Education. Now, let's see the result of our online poll. Our question is, should the government change the academic calendar of primary, secondary, and tertiary schools? The answer is, the results are yes, 60%, we should change, and no, 40%. And that's our opposing views for tonight. Tune in again next week for another bold and engaging discussion on the most relevant issues of today. I'm Rod Nepomuceno. Good night and God bless.